Welcome, everyone. We're back at the ConTech Exec Podcast. I have got a special guest today, Anna Berger from Trade. Now, it's not spelled the same way that you would spell trade, but it's T-R-A-Y-D, trade. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things. It's where I kind of got started in this whole technology side of the world. We're going to talk about payroll and the HR function in construction. I feel so bad for all the admin folks that have to deal with the crazy construction worker problems and paper time cards and even spreadsheets and stuff. So we're going to get into that today. Anna, thank you for being here today. How are things going for you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. All is well. We are hunkering down in what is a total tundra in New York City right now. But if the tundra is good for anything, it's, holing up and doing good work. So
yeah, well, it certainly is. Well, we just got through it. Actually, everybody knows I'm kind of here in Texas. So we just got through what we call Ice-mageddon, I guess. We had a lot of ice, not as much as Nashville, but we had a lot of ice here. And we were kind of hunkered down for a few weeks. But so while you're hunkered down in New York, what are you working on these days at Trade?
Yeah, so I'll give some context. Trade is an all-in-one back office operating system for specialty contractors with a specific focus on payroll, HR, and compliance tools. So really taking all of the core tasks of the back office and putting it into a streamlined system for teams to use.
All right. Well, certainly a needed thing because with a lot of confusion goes on with how complex payroll can actually get. If you've never run a payroll, or if you're not on the back office side of the world, it can get pretty hairy on a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, I think that there's a very big misconception on why construction payroll is undoubtedly the hardest out there, right? People can't really grasp the complexity of it. But in construction, people can make multiple different rates in a day depending on the type of work they're doing and the type of project that they're clocking in and out of. That type of dynamic rate management and rate switching and job title switching has historically broken tools like ADP and Paychecks, who don't have the data models to support that type of variability. Construction payroll deserves its own solution, right? So payroll admins can stop ripping their hair out and run payroll in 30 minutes or less.
Yeah, I mean, you stop and think about that. It's basically you suddenly go into an exponential form of complication, right? You have 3 different workers doing 3 different jobs, maybe on 3 different payroll scales. Suddenly that's 3 to the third power. You've got, 27 different,
second shift, third shift differentials.
Start adding in that as well.
Forget about it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and today, what we see teams doing is there's manual time capture in the field, right? So foremen or the workers themselves are signing in and out on pieces of paper. Those pieces of paper are passed back to the back office teams. The back office teams are deciphering that information and putting it into Excel, and then doing a ton of manual data manipulation with those numbers to apply all of the different rate modifications, right? Was this an overtime shift? Was this a nighttime shift? Was this a second shift, a third shift, right? Like you have to take all of that into account to really get to those ultimate rates that go into the payroll table. That process is 12 to 14 hours before trade. It's unbelievable.
Literally worked with a company out of New York. They had 5 different payroll days because of the number of unions. They had 27 different unions that they were working with. Had to do it on 5 separate payroll runs. I think it was like 2 on Tuesday and then 1 on Monday. And this was because of contract rules with unions. Certain unions need to be paid on a certain day. Certain jobs need to be paid in a certain week and a certain cadence. Sometimes they had one group that would run every 2 weeks instead of every week. And again, to your point, the complexity of it desires its own. I mean, it needs its own focus system.
Yeah, I mean, it was just Groundhog Day, right? So we can take that into account and really relate that to payroll. These teams are spending Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday taking time, processing it, manipulating it, putting it into payroll, and then spending the end of the week focusing on the reporting that has to be generated, certified payroll, sending it to all of the different agencies, whether it's like the Department of Labor or like the New York City Comptroller. That's a really big one right now. And so they're spending a full 5 days of their week processing payroll and the associated reports, and they wake up on Monday morning and they do it all over again, right?
Yeah, recycle.
Yeah, construction is on like a 7-day cycle. And when we meet these payroll admins, you can sense the desperation. They are on this rat race, right? Like they can't get off of this hamster wheel, right? They like the second they get off, they have to get back on and start the next cycle. There is no time to step out and be like, how can we make this better? Right? There is no time for those types of adjustments.
Right. Because the payroll doesn't stop. Yeah. Payroll doesn't stop. Right.
Of course not. Because the work doesn't stop. We're
Right.
talking about one of the most like essential industries in the world. Construction is the heartbeat of this country. It's not going to stop. It's recession proof. It's everything proof.
Yeah.
I
love it when you say that. I love it when you say that because most people don't realize that I did an article on it not too long ago talking about we don't have AI, we don't have data centers, we don't have energy infrastructure. We have nothing without construction. Everything that we have, the shelter, the roof over your head, the concrete under your feet, the roads that you drive on, all of this everything runs on construction and construction labor.
One of my favorite early stories, right? I'm from a construction family, right? But I didn't grow up in the field, and I'm very transparent about that, right? I grew up watching my dad struggle his way through standing up his own business and operating it on like the thinnest of margins, right? But there was an early story where this was years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was meeting with a contractor, and I was explaining the software to him, and one of his first questions was, does this work offline without cellular? And I asked him, I'm like, we're in New York City. And he's like, well, I have crews that are standing up the cell towers in like tertiary markets. So like if this doesn't work offline, we're out of business, and so it was this aha moment of being like, wow, you are building the built world and we are going to provide you the solutions to make that happen, right? This is this is the foundation, right? And trade has to meet these contractors where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that question several times, the whole offline thing. And people don't realize it still because we're very, very used to having connectivity, at least,
Sure.
Minimal connectivity now, even in the city. But there's still parts of the city, doesn't even have to be in a tertiary market. There's still parts of the city where you don't get signal, right?
100%.
Yeah. So like you feel like you're in a Faraday bag or something like that. You're like, well, I can't get anything in here. You have no idea.
Totally. And there was that Verizon outage like a couple weeks ago, and it was as if the world stopped. Talk about like knocking New Yorkers on their back. Like just take away our service and
Right.
forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, we could be in the end of days here. I don't know. You've got snowstorms and, Verizon outages. Who knows what's next? Google's going to go down. I don't know.
Not sure I want to ask.
Yeah. So, okay, you say you came from a construction family, watched dad get by on razor thin margins, which everybody that's ever started their own construction outfit or has been in construction, I never did understand it until I started running my own show because, I was a union carpenter, a journeyman for a long time. And then I decided I'd, step out on my own, buy my own company, buy myself a job basically. And, you don't understand it until all of a sudden I'm no longer a carpenter anymore. And I started realizing this every Thursday, Friday, like I was in the office trying to figure out, okay, it's payroll. We got to get these guys paid. I've got to figure out who's doing what and when they did it and how much time they spent on it. And then, you've got all that. So you're sitting there and you're no longer, what you thought you were going to be. Like, I love building things. I really do. I still love to build things. I've got stuff going on in my shop now. So it's one of those things. But then you realize, hey, by the way, this business is a business, and you don't make a lot of money every week unless you're watching your payroll, unless you're watching what the guys are doing. So I've just still wondered, what made you decide? What was the thing that said, hey, I'm going to get into this? This really needs to be done.
There's so much to unpack there, and what you what you just said is something I hear daily, right? These tradesmen who are professional builders are being asked not only to run payroll, but to keep a business 1000% compliant in an industry that is under a ton of regulatory pressure, especially now, right? Especially on like federal and public works, the bar for compliance keeps getting higher and higher. The level of reporting that is needed is through the roof. And when I talk to my clients, like, they're trained carpenters, they're trained plumbers, right? They pour concrete. This is their first time, right? Managing and standing up a back office with a growing field team. It's not necessarily second nature, right? And they need support. No,
right.
It's not. And they need support. And like, that's really where, like, that was something I saw with my dad and all of my construction uncles, right? That was an early insight of like, they are so good at what they are trained to do, right? And the business side, support is needed. Like in any business. In my business, like, I'm not an engineer. I hired like for my blind spots, right? And so the same should be said about construction companies. You need to hire for like the parts of the business that you're not an expert in, right? So I would say, watching my dad, right, make these critical business decisions on little to no data visibility was probably an early insight, matched with the fact that for trade contractors, 70% or more of their total costs are labor related. And so when you think about keeping a project on time and on budget, if labor numbers are off, everything is off. And so when I was like, there's so much to fix here, where do I start? All roads led back to payroll being the control center, right? If payroll numbers, labor forecasting, and projections are accurate, you're likely going to end where you want to end, right? If those numbers are off, say goodbye to that razor thin margin, right? And so, it was years and years of me listening to people complain, really. There's no glamorous story here. It was like hearing firsthand like that there was just like a continuous uphill battle in the back office, teams forced to use tools that were not providing them anything useful, right? If anything, it just added way more work. And
it gets back to your original statement. It was like, there's no time almost to try to figure out a solution because there's no stepping back from basically the edge that they're always on. Right. It's, you start the same thing the next week. Bam, we got to do this. No, I don't have time to get back to figure out where we went wrong.
Yeah. Any other industry, it's a 2-week payroll cycle. Right?
Yeah.
Construction being a 7-day cycle leaves no room for innovation, for creativity. You have to keep moving. You have to keep processing. Otherwise, if you don't pay those workers, they're not showing up on Monday, and then timeline goes out the window.
Yeah.
So, it was a compilation of just like hearing so many people struggle, people that I care very deeply about, right? So it was like hitting me in a way that was like, why is someone not doing anything about this? And then I actually like went to step into my dad's back office. And the second I got my hands on all of those non-industry specific tools, like the biggest names in payroll, I was like, come on, this is crazy, right? How is a $1.2 trillion industry in the US forced to use software that's designed for every other industry but them?
Yeah, supported by Excel. Yeah, no, I get it. I absolutely get it. I thought it was interesting and come to find out. And folks don't realize this because they just deal with it on a daily basis. But we calculated up across the board. And I've said for smaller companies, it's not the same amount, but for larger companies, it might be more. But if you have one bad paycheck on average in the construction industry, this, $1 trillion industry, one bad paycheck, that one bad paycheck can cost you up to $960 per check just to get it fixed, right? Whether you have to go through the big ADPs or the paychecks or whatever, you got trying to get, the costs incurred of writing an incorrect payroll check. $960. Now, I'm telling you right now, if you're a small operator, those add up pretty quick during a year, right? And that's just one right? So, and then you got 52 weeks. You got one a week, 52 weeks. Imagine, and then you can scale it automatically and go through and say, like, if you have 200 people, imagine how many people, if you've got, every week you've got those kind of things going on. I think it's interesting.
And it's not just like the time spent on the correction or the void or the back pay, but it's also like trying to get a hold of customer service agents at these like giant companies that do not care if you stay or go. They don't care. Like you are a drop in the ocean. And, for construction, these paychecks are the lifeline, right? And that has been historically missed at these larger companies. The attention to detail, I say to my team all the time, whether they like this mentality or not, I'm like, if we are right 99.6% of the time, we failed. Like payroll precision, it's 100%. There is no margin for error because all of the data that we're processing then gets put onto certified payroll reports, which go right to the government, right? And so if there are errors and issues there, the fees, the fines, the penalties are way more than $900, right?
No, I get you. Yeah. So you got into the back office and you said, there's got to be a better way, right? And so it just said, I'm going to find a software engineer. We're going to fix this. Is that how this all kind of is? I got to fix it.
I saw it in my dad's office and my dad was like, listen, we have some budget. Why don't you go try to find something that works, right? And so I spent the next 6 months demoing every software and sitting in all of my like uncles' back offices trying to see maybe they're doing something better than my dad and I'll bring it back. After 6 months and hundreds of conversations, I started it was clear that nothing existed that was worthwhile spending the money on. And I started like seeing trade on my ceiling at night, right? And as a serial founder, the second you start visualizing your product on your ceiling, you're kind of in, whether you like to admit it or not, you're going to go build it. And I became obsessed with the problem. I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I knew that in order for payroll to be right, we had to get the field bought in, right? And if you want to get the field bought in to provide better data for the back office, you have to make it a tool they want to use. So that's really where this whole thing started. If we strip all the way down to like our MVP, the first thing that got into the market, it was a very simple time clock where the workers could see their wages accruing throughout the day. And all of that would port into our payroll tables. There was no HR, there was no scheduling, there was no reporting. It really was bare bones, like a time app into payroll. Obviously, since then, over the last couple of years, we've deeply expanded. But to our core, right, the tool is designed to marry the field and the office once and for all.
Right. So you started out with just capturing attendance, right? Capturing that event kind of thing. And then it obviously it's going to balloon from there because everybody wants more features but that's the base information. And I think that's interesting too, because again, that's when you talk about it, it's like, well, you got to start with the basics, right? And you do, to your point, you do have to make it easy for the field because just like dad or whoever your uncles, they're tradespeople. They're not in the business of, or weren't in the business of when they're being in the trades, or weren't in the business of, they're just filling out paper time cards. They don't see the value of it, and they don't see the importance of it because they're not writing the checks, right? But that accuracy has to be there to kind of start with.
%. Yeah, something that was fascinating to me early on is there a lot of time clocks exist. I could probably rattle off 12 right now.
You and me both.
Just do time tracking.
Yeah.
The adoption of those apps is horrific because the field teams know they are going to get paid with or without their involvement in that app, right? Legally, they have to. And so with trade, we took a very different approach. It was like, I don't want them to just participate. I want them to be like actively involved and very, very excited. What do workers get very excited about? Their wages, visibility to their pay stubs, what their predicted earnings are going to be, especially when they're bouncing between prevailing wage work and not, right? So like their wages can bump up in certain parts of the week and then they have more money. in their paycheck. And so they have like predictive insights heading into the weekend. And so we like have layered these really interesting features into the worker app where it's like they want to participate here, right? And something crazy, it's like trade comes in 9 languages. And you'd think that that is like very obvious, but there's almost no time clocks on the market that come in anything other than English. And for an industry as diverse as construction, how do you expect there to be like kind of large adoption if people can't even understand the tool?
Right. They can't read the language that it's in. I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. So I always found the difficulty was, and you can tell me about this a little bit. Obviously, you want to get them interested, but I've always found that guys always tended to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to cheat the system. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, like they really don't have to be involved. They know they're going to get paid. I always wondered about it. I never did understand it. I was like, why would people spend a lot of time trying to figure out how not to use the system that's at hand. And I just, I never did get that.
Me either. We've kind of named those as the bad actors, right? The ones that will go to any length to not participate, or the ones that will participate but then try to sneak through the back door, right? Where they will enter the geolocation, clock in, and then leave.
Yeah.
Right. And there's only so much software can do, right? Mm-hmm. And so ultimately it's like, what kind of culture are you building in your company? Mm-hmm. What do you want to enforce, right?
Yeah.
And software is the second line of defense, but that's really what the foreman and the supervisors are there for, right?
That is correct.
Is to keep up how people show up and behave on site.
Right. Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the things. It was kind of a setup question there a little bit, because the truth is, and that's this thing that I noticed the most. The first excuse that you always get is when you talk about this, the guys will never do it. You know? The truth is, folks, is that there will be some that will never want to do it. And to your point, the bad actors will always be there. But in today's market, you cannot let the bad actors dictate your future behavior. And that is just kind of point blank, which kind of brings me to the next point about, I always talk about the age of AI. And at some point during our time, as we grow into the age of AI, we're going to have to provide digital receipts for basically everything that we're able to do. We're going to have to be able to provide that too. If you're a specialty contractor, they're probably going to start requiring, the GCs are going to start requiring, or the clients are going to start requiring some sort of digital receipt to say, okay, on these particular jobs, I need to, give me some backup information about how well you track this, and this, because we don't want this interfering with our process. We want to know what your processes are, whether it's dealing with safety, whether it's dealing with your financials or your payroll or anything like that. They're going to start requiring those things. And these smaller mid-market companies that may not be in the digital world yet, or are just dabbling in the digital world, are going to have to get more accurate and going to have to be more involved in it.
Something that I say a lot these days is, especially with all of the new AI startups that are coming in, until we structure all of the unstructured data, there's not much AI can do right now for this industry. We need to first clean up house before we can leverage tools like AI to propel us forward.
That's correct.
Trade is designed to take 100 spreadsheets across your PMs, estimators, schedulers, payroll admins, HR admins, and turn that into a working model that AI can then use to supercharge your business insights and learnings. Right? But until you get away from Excel and, disparate systems, it's not going to work wonders like everyone's claiming it will, right? Trade is the foundation, right? It is the data lake for greater possibility, right? Without being too over the top, but it's true. It's we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. We do. Well, I always see that too. I think I saw it just the other day. Somebody had some sort of, I don't know if it was a LinkedIn post or it was a paid for ad on LinkedIn or whatever, but this new application can save you 30 to 40% on your whatever. I start shaking my head and I'm like, you can't claim that. I mean, I guess you can, and maybe in some case, maybe it did, but it all comes down to, the contractor themselves. They have to be willing and be ready to step up into the digital age. They have to be able to admit, one, that their data is kind of probably jacked up and it needs structuring, to your point. But they also need to admit that they're going to have to start looking at software and tools as the same way they would look at drills and hammers and, the tools of their own trade. These will become the tools of the trade on the office side of the world, no matter what.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
So you never just said there was no defining moment which said you started working, you started seeing it on your ceiling, and then what happened? Like, I saw that you went through. Did you work with Suffolk? And so kind of how did that all kind of shape up? Because they're doing a lot of good work.
Yeah, our first lucky break was actually Y Combinator.
Okay.
It was a startup accelerator out in San Francisco, which we participated in 2023. Once I don't know, there was a moment where you get to the point where you're like, I guess I'm going to go do this, right? Like, my dad told me my whole life I'm never allowed to touch construction, right? Because of like what he had lived through. And so then here I am, right, building software to completely like revolutionize the back office. Once I, in my head, was like, this is how I'm going to spend the next 10 plus years, and I was excited about that, then it's like, okay, let's raise money to actually do this properly. I didn't want to do this halfway. I didn't want to become another pointed solution in an industry with thousands of point solutions, right? And point solutions being like just a time clock, just a payroll system, just a scheduler. That adds to the clutter. That is not helpful, right? We need to condense, consolidate, bring all of the data together. And so I knew right out of the gate that what I wanted to do was going to require capital. And so I put myself out there, notoriously like pitched 149 times, got 149 rejections, was totally beaten down, turned to my mom and was like, I think this is the end of the road. Like, I can't, and she was like, do one more meeting. And that one meeting was Y Combinator, and that changed my life. And so, for any founder listening, it's like, go one more, do that one more meeting, like dig deep and push 1 inch further. And from there, right, we had Suffolk Technologies lead our seed round, which was so exciting, right? Because that's market validation. They are experts in the built world. All they do is invest in the best and brightest building software and hardware for the built world. And so once we got their seal of approval, for me, that was like, okay, we have the capital and the investor class to be dangerous. And I knew my vision was real, and I could see it so clearly, but you gotta then put it into market and make it happen. And so our seed round was all about, our first like 100 customers and making sure that they were obsessed with us, right? As a fintech company, you can't explosively grow like some of these AI startups that we're seeing. You have to grow thoughtfully, and you can't grow beyond what you can support. And so and I think a lot of founders can make that mistake where they choose hyper growth and top line numbers over churn numbers, a leaky bucket, all those things. And so I can confidently say like our customers have been growing with us from the very, very beginning. And that's what I look for. Those, as a founder, as a CEO, like I'm looking for our net retention.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Quite honestly, I always say that these steps to success aren't 4 feet tall, right? I mean, you don't make large jumps. And if you do, most likely you end up falling back to the either one down or even farther. So in this industry, especially, and I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're in fintech. I don't care if you're pouring concrete. I don't care if you're framing houses. Your successes with what you do are going to be incremental. They're going to be small. They're going to be gained over years, not over days. And we have to be realistic about that. We have to be looking at it and going, okay, look, how can we make one better step? And again, you're going to make mistakes, but that is absolutely where you're going to learn from, is where you make your mistakes. And I think it's important that you talked about that, because you needed to make those mistakes. You needed to have those errors. Otherwise, you're not, nobody grows when they're winning all the time. I think that's really weird.
There's a misconception about the founder journey. It is not about having one good idea once. It is about every day having 100 decisions and 95 of them you choosing right. Right? As you get closer and closer and closer and closer to where you want to go, things are going to go wrong. What's the decision you make to turn it the right way? Right? Is that decision the right one? And then it points you a little closer. I had to do work on myself in this journey on being like, oh, things keep going wrong. It's like, of course, we're hyper growth mode. Like, of course they're going to go wrong. Things needing to evolve is not a sign that things are going poorly. Things needing to evolve is actually a sign that you are like pushing into a space you weren't before, and that is inherently going to cause friction, right?
Yeah.
Meeting structures are going to break. Team structures are going to break. Maybe the right people for the right seat are no longer the right people for the right seat. Certain customers who used to be perfect for the platform, maybe they're like now not the perfect fit for the platform based on how they're using it, right? You have to be radically honest with yourself every step of the way, every day, right? It's not one decision, one choice, one good idea. It's like consistently pushing forward with like that same concept in mind.
I think you brought a good point there. You have some customers no longer a fit for the platform. You will have customers along the way who probably stay the same, right? You're probably changing, you're evolving, and they're not following along with you. They're not, and they want that platform to be the way that it always was. You know, construction has a real tendency to stick with the status quo. I mean, if we stop and think how long we've been on paper timesheets and still there's companies out there, you know, I think we're okay with paper timesheets.
Yeah, totally.
You know, they have a tendency to want to be in the status quo. They feel safe there. But to your point, you have to grow. And like I said, if you're a tech company, yes, you need incremental growth and you've got to work, you know, through your mistakes to make it to that next level. If you're a construction company, folks, please listen out there. If you're a construction leader, executive, whatever, you're out there and you're focusing on these issues. And again, I know you've got them, fix one of them and then move to the next one, fix the next one and then move to the next one. You know, the thing that people get wrong is they think they need to fix them all at one time or there's one easy button. And there is not. And even though your office administrators or your field supervisor will say, well, this should be easy. It probably won't be, because most of the time what I find is you're going to need to repair not only maybe some of your technical processes, but you're going to need to repair some of your human processes as well, whether that's attitude, whether that's culture, whether that is we've always done it this way mentality. You're going to have to approach that and you're going to have to say, hey, look, we can't do it this way anymore. And we're going to have to make some adjustments. And those are hard. Those are very, very difficult decisions to make.
Totally. I think one of my hardest decisions was one of our earliest customers. This is speaking so transparently. For our first few customers, we built them anything they asked for. Mm-hmm. We were like,
you're people pleaser.
Yeah, but also when you're day zero and you know no one has jumped on board, and then you have your first few believers, you build what they ask for, right? Because you're like, you took a bet on me, we're gonna give you what you want. A couple hundred customers later, you realize like they're sitting on a branch of the app that is like really messing with things because they have a certain flow and a certain use case that is just not how trade was really designed, and like throwing everything off, frankly. And you have to make this decision of being like, one of my first customers that we built so much custom stuff for, right, which is just like time, energy, such a worthwhile investment. And
you're having to support that. Yeah, I know.
Having to support that, but it's bringing down the rest of the ship. You know, those are moments, right? As a founder, you don't want to have that conversation.
It is a gut check moment, that is for sure. And it's a gut check moment even for said contractor, right? Because it's okay, I've got a tool that I've been using, has been designed for me, but it can no longer support, my behavior.
Right. Yeah.
That is a tough one. That's a tough one.
Wouldn't put anybody else in those shoes that day. That was a tough day.
Yeah, that was a tough day. I'm sure it was. Lots of tough days in the industry for sure. Some days are definitely gut check moments, but there are some horizons and there's some really good days, when things go right. You say you've got some new stuff coming up, and I kind of wanted to know, What's on the horizon for?
We have not ever stopped innovating. We have been innovating since the day we decided to start this thing. Kara and I are a really powerful team, right? With me kind of front of house in sales and her owning the product and the platform, which has allowed us to keep our ear to the ground with customers and really triage their most critical needs almost in real time. So we're entering into a phase where we can just kind of take everything we've learned over the last few years and just supercharge it. We recently closed our Series A.
Yay.
Has been a pretty major milestone for us as a business. Right now, it's like, our initial seed round was what we needed to prove this out. And our Series A is what we need to get trade in as many hands as possible, right? Because we know it works. We know it's saving teams, over 80 hours a month in back office admin. And I think where we're pushing next is real-time job costing, right? Really, truly unlocking, payroll isn't just about direct labor costs that Sam makes $60 an hour, but Sam makes $60 an hour and then the company is paying this much in taxes, this much in benefits, this much in reimbursements, and really taking a look at that full burden and what that could do for project forecasting. And so we're really just going further, right? It's always the plan, it's always the roadmap that we've been designing, but now that we have such a solid cohort of customers, like we can use everything we've learned to take the platform forward.
That's fantastic. Well, that's what the folks need. They need somebody that and not only has been through the actual rigors of just getting that base data layer down.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, by the way, you've got, these folks have got 40 hours. These folks have got 60 hours. These folks have got this much overtime. You got that part going. But then now let's get detailed and get that costing structure correct as to what they were doing and then how much that's actually costing you for them to do it. I think that's important, very important. So that's an exciting step, right?
Totally. It's a natural evolution. There is no deep pivot here, which so many founders have to take. We've never pivoted. We have been construction payroll from like day zero, and it's just evolved. And this is the next step on that journey.
That's great. That's great. So when you would talk about your clients, if folks are out there, listening or checking into this podcast, would you say your market is, you got mid-market products, small to mid-market kind of folks?
Yeah, we deal with trade contractors that have anywhere from 10 to 1,000 workers in the field.
Okay.
And we don't cap at 1,000, but that tends to be the range we specialize in. And they could be multi-trade, multi-state, union, non-union. We're trade agnostic, so whether they're concrete, plumbing, carpentry, all are welcome. Fundamentally, the way you pay people is the same trade to trade, right? And how complex the ruling is, no trade is safe from that.
Right. And I find those folks, these are the kind of folks that need it the most, right? These are the folks that are so involved in just what they're doing, like they're pouring concrete or, they're framing houses or they're whatever they're doing. Doesn't matter. Either you're in the trade, you're focused on the trade. Last thing that you want to do, just from experience. Yeah. Last thing I wanted to do was be so involved in my payroll that I couldn't get back to, building, right? So needed that help.
We get that and we know that. That's why we're positioned as like the back office best friend. Like you stay focused on winning projects, winning bids, getting more work, doing the work, completing it on time. We'll handle the back office admin.
Do folks need an ERP or I like a lot of these folks are working in QuickBooks or they're working in maybe even Foundation or anything like that. Does yours integrate with, certain products like that?
Accounting is still required, right, as a secondary component to trade to really monitor the full picture of the business. And we have available integrations to support that with Sage, with QuickBooks, Foundations, Acumatica, kind of the list goes on. And so, we welcome those conversations. We know that, ideally it should just be trade plus an accounting system and nothing else. And that is likely a decrease from the amount of solutions they're using today.
Well, that's what you want. And again, when we start talking about these businesses, we start talking about the mid-market businesses or the small businesses, those stuff. They need that help. They need that understanding of, hey, I'm always a big fan of minimizing a tech stack. I don't think we need 1,000 different products out there. I actually talked with a company one time. They said they had 150 different applications. It was a fairly large company, but it was like 150 different applications, even for a large company. That's just crazy.
That's a lot.
There is no reason for that. There is zero. And it's because, somebody had it in their budget and they didn't combine all of their technological knowledge. They were parsing it out in their budgetary concerns, right? They didn't think that it all needed to connect up, and now they're dealing with just a mess, right? It's insane. It's insane. So yeah, I say keep the tech stack small.
Totally. Fewer, better, faster.
Right. Keep it simple, stupid, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
So before we part ways, how do folks get in touch with you if they want to know more about trade or what's, coming up on the horizon? How do folks get in touch with y'all?
Yeah, the best place is our website, buildtrade.com. That is where you can book a demo, read some case studies, learn about the product in more detail, reach out to our team. If you want to find me personally, probably on LinkedIn. It's just Anna Berger, and if you type in trade, I'm pretty sure it will pop up first. And I read all my messages, right? So it's not uncommon for contractors or payroll admins to reach out to me right on LinkedIn once they've seen content or a post that resonates. I welcome all of that inbound. I still lead sales at Trade. It's my favorite part of the day is talking to prospective customers and showing them what can exist.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so any outlet works.
Are you doing any conventions are a big thing,
Yes.
So were you at Concrete World?
So World of Concrete, no, not this year. We were there last year. My team right now is at National Demolition Association, their annual show in Phoenix.
Yeah, those guys definitely need help.
Yeah. So we're kind of spread throughout the country. We love AGC. We love CFMA, which is Construction Financial Management.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So we participate often, and we tend to go to 1 to 2 shows a month throughout the year.
Do you ever go to like NECA?
Yes.
NECA, Magna, SMACNA?
Yes. Yeah. All of the acronyms.
All the acronyms.
It's amazing when newcomers to the industry learn like BCA, CCA, CIC, STA, CFMA. They're like, what is going on? It's sometimes hard to keep them straight, but associations are incredible, right? Like they are a pre-existing network of friends and competitors who like are in the trenches together in a tight geolocation. Valuable.
I think it's really valuable too. I think it's important to go to those and kind of get a good idea of where things are in the market, kind of not only knowing who your competitors are, but I think a lot of times the trades, especially, they want to see you face to face. They're definitely, it's definitely a relationship business at the end of the day.
100%.
It's very, very personal, even though it's on a professional level. It's very much about the relationship that you're developing and knowing that you're going to carry the product forward and you're going to help them at the end of the day and you're going to be with them for a while, right?
Yes.
That's another thing. Is they're not going to be kind of out there on their ear, wondering what happened to where's my vendor? Where'd they go?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's something I say all the time. I'm like, when I'm in sales conversations, I'm like, this is a 10-year relationship that we're building, right? Like, let's do this the right way. Let's nail this implementation. Let's set you up for success so you don't even consider another movement.
That's right. That's right. Even though they may shop you in 3, you want it to be a 10-year, commitment. You do.
Keep me on my toes.
Well, it does happen to the best of us, right? Everybody gets shopped a little bit, but again, it only makes the product better. It makes you better, right? Because you want to be top of the industry. I get it.
I agree. It's like if I have competitors, I'm glad. It means I'm on the money, right?
That's right.
There is a market here, and it keeps me innovating. And so as a founder, bring it on.
I love it. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. 45 minutes goes really, really fast.
It does. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And everybody out there, thanks for joining the ConTech Exec. I will be putting in Anna's contact information as far as LinkedIn contact into the show notes if you want to reach out there. I'll also put the website in there for you. So if you want just a direct link, otherwise you can look it up. Like I said, on LinkedIn, it's Anna Berger. And until next time, y'all, be safe out there building, and we'll see you next time on the ConTech Exec. Thanks so much.